Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be doing my food presentation on pho. So let's take a look at the history and culture of pho. Pho is a traditional Vietnamese dish. Its origins date back to the early 20th century. Because it is a street food, there is not an exact record of when and where it was first created. So pho consists of beef broth and rice noodles. Beef broth was not previously incorporated into Vietnamese food. However, French colonists consumed beef in large amounts. This left many beef bones available for street vendors to buy and use inexpensively. Over time, it slowly became an iconic symbol of Vietnamese street food culture. This was the culture of the working class people of this area. So, in the 1950s, as communism was closing in on Vietnam, the existence of pho was threatened. Businesses were forced to follow strict government regulation. Ingredients became more limited to items such as wheat and potatoes. These ingredients cannot be made to cook pho. However, pho went underground and many street vendors sold it in secret. Better ingredients such as bone broth became rare and hard to come by. Some were able to smuggle the needed ingredients, and pho lived on in those who knew the right place to look for it, despite being under the thumb of a communist government. Pho lives on in Vietnamese culture, and many people around the world can now also enjoy this dish. So, one of the most important ingredients in pho are rice noodles. So, let's look at the nutrient composition of rice noodles. 1 cup of rice noodles contains 187 calories, zero point 0.4 grams of fat, 41.8 grams of carbohydrates, 1.75 grams of fiber, 438 milligrams of sodium. So as you can see, rice noodles alone do not provide very much nutritional value, and they also don't have any notable vitamins. So let's look at how rice noodles are cultivated. Rice noodles are made from rice flour, which comes from rice. Rice is a major crop in Vietnam and a major source of income for many rural Vietnamese families. Rice is available internationally and is easily accessible for most. It is dried, so it is pretty much always available. So even if you live in an area where rice isn't grown, it's pretty accessible no matter where you are. Rice is planted in the spring months and grows throughout the summer. It's then harvested in the fall. Although rice production is on the lower spectrum in terms of crops that affect the carbon footprint, the growing of rice produces methane gas and requires a lot of water. So it's not the most sustainable, but it's not terrible either. More efforts could be made to make rice production more sustainable. So how do you know you're getting fresh, high quality rice noodles, and what do they look like? Rice noodles produce the best results when they are handmade and fresh. So you can buy them fresh or dried. They can be found at most Asian markets in the United States. If they're fresh, they'll be located in the refrigerator section. Just make sure they have not been damaged or broken and double check that expiration date. So what's pho's relationship to disease? The bone broth of pho may be linked to reducing inflammation, which can be beneficial to joint health. Rice noodles within pho are gluten-free, which means it can be eaten by those with diseases such as celiac disease or a gluten intolerance. However, pho can be high in sodium, which increases the risk for developing diseases such as hypertension and obesity. Preparing pho is a very lengthy process. The first step is to prepare the broth by using beef bones and adding in onion, ginger, and shallots. Next, the spices must be prepared from clove, cinnamon, ginger, and so on. This seasoning is then added into the broth. Third, the rice noodles are cooked and added to the broth. Finally, the toppings must be mixed in. The toppings can include things like bean sprouts, thinly sliced beef, chilies, and so on. So I got my pho from a local Vietnamese place called Pho 99. It arrived in a very large bowl, much bigger than I expected. And there was a topping, there was a plate with toppings on it that included shoots and mint leaves. And according to the waitress, it is traditionally eaten by starting with sipping some of the broth from the bowl with a soup spoon or simply picking up the bowl and drinking from the side of it. The broth had so much flavor, and I could taste all the different herbs and ingredients that are used to flavor it. It was also a bit salty. Once you have taken away some of the broth, you then begin to eat the noodles and pieces of steak with chopsticks. The noodles were very soft, and I really liked them. They didn't have much flavor by themselves, but the broth definitely makes up for it. However, I did not enjoy the steak part as much. I do not really like steak, and it was especially tough and hard to chew. Overall, I really enjoyed the dish and all the flavors that it had. I would definitely eat it again, but maybe next time I would take the less traditional route and eat it with chicken instead. So you can see my pho here. So these are the toppings that I added in afterwards, and you can kind of see all the different herbs that are already mixed in there, and it was really good. So to compare it to my own experience, I've heard of pho before when I've eaten at Vietnamese restaurants. However, I usually opt for less intimidating dishes that are mainly just noodles. I wasn't sure if I would like it before I tried it because I didn't know what the ingredients were. But after research, I realized it consisted of many foods that I'm actually familiar with. Rice noodles are one of the main ingredients in pho. Rice noodles are easily accessible in Vietnam because rice grows very well there. I have grown up in the South eating different kinds of rice all the time. Rice also grows well in the South and has been incorporated into many of my dishes that I've grown up with. Rice noodles are not as common though, and this has definitely contributed to me never trying them before now. Overall, it was really interesting to learn about the history of pho in Vietnam, and I'll definitely be eating it again. And here's my references, and thank you so much for listening.